Hi, I'm Greg Reich with Magura, and I'm here to show you our new HYMEC system. HYMEC is available from Biker's Choice, and HYMEC stands for hydraulic from mechanical. So this system converts your mechanical clutch into a hydraulic system. The benefits of the system are up to 25% less clutch pull, which is less rider fatigue, better control of the bike itself, zero maintenance. You have no more cables to lube, no more free play adjustment. The hydraulic system self-adjusts, you never have to touch it. We use a mineral oil called Magura Blood that never needs changing out. Basically, it does not attract moisture like DOT fluid, so virtually no maintenance on this system. The other benefit would be just a real fluid feel of the clutch. You never have to adjust the free play. The engagement point is always in the same pressure point on your lever. Engagement, disengagement is very immediate, so very good performance. Having said all that, I'm going to throw this over to Pete and Aaron, and they're going to show you how to install this system.
Thanks, Greg. We're going to install this HYMEC clutch on this super nice Sportster. And first we show you when you receive this clutch, it's in this box. When we open it up, we see our HYMEC system. And right away, you can see everything is installed, ready to put on the bike. Do a real quick check. I cannot move this lever. That indicates it's full of fluid or no air in the system. So having said that, we have a couple more things here. We do give you an installation manual. Additionally, in the box you will find a small 4mm insert and a 5mm swedge ferrule. We Magura people call them olives. This we will show you a little later on. We would use this to shorten the line without having to do additional bleeding. As you see here, he is basically starting right from the very beginning, removing the mirror from the left side on the clutch lever. Once he has the mechanical lever removed and the cable unhooked there, we basically will start with temporarily installing the master cylinder on the bar. So as you can see, basically Aaron, our tech, he's using pretty much at this point all ordinary regular tools that should be found in about everybody's toolbox. So he's already got the mechanical part off the handlebar. And you do notice here when you look at our HYMEC, it comes without the clamp, the lower clamp. So we want to use the same clamp that you remove from the mechanical lever onto this master cylinder. So he's getting close to getting his side cover removed. Side cover removed, hex. He's going to remove the ramp completely, so it's for an easy removal of the mechanical cable. Get it lined up so that that little internal peg there will come through the slot provided for it. There it comes. Okay, he will remove that hex fitting to take the cable out of the cover. So now you can see why he loosened up his adjuster earlier so that he can turn the cable housing very freely here and make it an easier way to get it off the bike. Okay, so now we have all the components from the original mechanical clutch cable system removed. So now our tech is removing those two screws that come with the HYMEC system. So it is important you need to use the screws that we provide because there's a difference in the threads. And also we need to use the washer, replace that back on the the Magura screw that came with the HYMEC. And then we also will use, as you notice here, the lower mechanical lever clamp that we will install onto the HYMEC master cylinder here in just a moment when Aaron puts it up there under the handlebar. So he is now ready to route make a general routing of our system through the bike. So you can see the slave cylinder is not very big, so it should come through in about all the bikes without any necessary removal of the tubing and so on things like that. Now, should you have, for some reason, some special routing that you want to do and so on and so forth, it is, of course, not a big issue also that we could separate our line. I would prefer, if we do that, not to separate it here necessarily. It'd be easier to do it at the master cylinder, where we actually also shorten the line. So as Aaron is getting ready to put that on there, and we may do our final adjusting at the master, how you want it to the pivot and so on and so forth. This we'll all do that at the end. That's our last final steps. He's basically just installing it now, and maybe not even tighten all the screws to torque spec yet. But so we just have it in place. He's got that finger tightened up there on the handlebar, so he's now coming down here and is getting ready to put the. Do we need to put it in there first?
I think we'll be okay.
Okay. You can actually turn that slave cylinder in the direction so that that bleeder valve, what Aaron is asking about there, will be in a position where you think it's most optimum for your bike. So he's now got the ramp back in there. He's going to put he actually already has it hooked on here. As you see, he did that very quickly. I didn't even see him slip it in there, but he's got it on there just like the cable system into the same area where the mechanical cable was. And he's now putting that ramp back in and turning his adjuster screw counterclockwise, the left-hand threading for that ramp setting. Okay, now we've got the basic slave cylinder installed and the ramp put back in place here. So now let's work on getting our free play set properly. So always be sure when to check the free play, like Aaron is going to actually, you can see we got about 3/8 of an inch here currently. And he's going to pull, shows you, he's pulling on that slave cylinder body basically as hard as he can with his fingers. And that is what we actually now call total free play. So we got about, the way it's set right at the moment, we've got practically about 5/8 of an inch there, or maybe a 1/2 inch. And so he is now going to turn his adjustment and brings that up. So we'll have about a gap there of about, let's say, a good 1/8 of an inch, or maybe a little less than 1/4, someplace in that area. So that's a little close, probably just a little more. And the important thing is that we have that free play, so we always engage the clutch completely and have no clutch slippage. So looks like Aaron's got it set pretty good. He pulled on that as hard as he could. So now when he lets loose, the spring tension internally will suck that slave cylinder up against the fitting we installed here before. That's already prefixed on the slave cylinder piston rod. So now he's got the free play of about 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to go with that. And so the next step is we want to show you what we have inside right here to help install the clutch piston rod. So he's going to, when you get that clutch, that back cap is basically, should be about finger tight. So he's going to take that off, and he's got a little white plug in here. The reason for that plug is simply that when we push that piston rod all the way forward, it makes it easier to install here on the ramp. So now we got it all installed, so clearly that has to come out. Otherwise, our master cylinder lever, as we showed earlier, will totally be hard and it won't work. So he takes that out and put the cap back. And as he's doing that, I can also maybe a couple points here. All we have in the back of the slave cylinder body is an airspace. And what that does is when you work the clutch, basically the piston goes back and forth, and then actually lets a little air go in and out right here. So we don't want to put any kind of sealer on there. We only want to torque that up so it's nice and snug with the wrench, and it'd be good to go. The other thing there is, if you don't have the motor running, it could be, or especially if you wash the bike, it could be that you might hear a little bit of a sucking sound there, and that is basically very, very normal. It's built into the system. All that is just a little bit of air going back and forth right in the backside. So we think we got that free play set about where we wanted. And yeah, so he's now going up to the master cylinder on the lever blade up there, working the clutch. And as you can see here, we pull that ramp right about 10 and a half, 11 millimeters. And that's should be sufficient to disengage the clutch. And then, as you can see here, we delivered this clutch with about a 57-inch tube length. And for this bike, it appears to be a little long. So later we're going to show you how to shorten it. At the same time, we talked about that if you feel like you need to have this bleeder plug straight type on top, the tech, he is going to open up that sleeve nut on the master cylinder, which is this part right here. He's just going to crack it open enough where he can swivel the line. Then he's going to turn that line, and whenever it's at the top, he will snug it back up.
Necessary or not, I almost always tell people to
Put a new one.
use a new gasket.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
Okay, he's got the gasket in place now, and he put a new one on there. That's his preference. So put the cover back on, line up the bolt holes, and put his 6 screws back in. And as you noticed earlier, he put a little, he's got somewhat of a Loctite stick. He put a little on the threads to reassure himself that those screws will not come loose. Look in your service manual, in your operator's manual, and torque to the factory Honda spec. While he's securing that cover back in place, one point we could mention is about the slave cylinder and that bleeder, this black bleeder right here. The slave cylinder body itself with the bleeder on top here, this is a little rubber cover on there, just for a little protection. This bleeder can be positioned any place. It doesn't matter where it is for the performance of the system. But if you want it dead center here, then you have to do one of two things. Either zip tie enough so that the tube cannot turn, or you can try to loosen up at the master cylinder and twist the tube enough so it will be about in the upright position or in the bottom, wherever you want it. Our tech, he installed that line very nicely here, and he wanted it to come through center, we spoke about earlier. But he decided the tube, he thinks he wants it about an inch and a half shorter. So therefore, we're going to show you how to cut the tubing and reinstall it. And the intentions is that we will do that and don't have to bleed the system. Even though the system is not difficult to bleed, he's trying to be careful not to sling it around too much. We want to try to do this without needing to add any fluid or bleeding. So he's going to take a tubing cutter and cut it whatever length he wants. So he's trying to make an estimate there, how he likes it. As you see here, he slid that sleeve nut back on the line, because this will be the last thing that goes into the master cylinder after he cuts it and installs the new small parts. We're using a little tubing cutter that is available. However, you can use a box cutter or something else to just try to make a nice clean cut. And so he's now proceeding with his little small parts. First, he slips that swedge ferrule, the olive on there, and lets it slide back, and it can only go back as far as his sleeve nut is. Now he's putting in this 4mm insert, and he may need a little tool. Oh, his fingers are tech ready there. He managed to do it with his fingers. So he brings back up his parts that belong in there. So now he's going to push that into back into the master cylinder as far as he can. And at this point in time, you can also try to line up your slave cylinder bleed plug somewhat. That would be a time to do that if you think you need to twist that tubing a little. So he's pushing that all the way in. So now he's going to tighten it with his fingers first. And then he'll snug it up with the wrench. And when he does that, he will feel that swedge olive starting to crimp onto the line. So you can snug that up fairly tight. As you will remember when you took it off, in the case for shortening, the original one was also very snug inside that master. There's a good many threads going internally into that alloy master cylinder body, so it should not be any issues about stripping threads. So he thinks he's got it pretty snug. And now, if we didn't lose too much fluid or whatever happened to us when doing other things, and nobody punched around on our master cylinder, we should be ready to go. But you see here, in our process when we were doing all these other parts, showing you how to line up the clutch system and so forth, we obviously lost some fluid. So what I'm actually doing here at the moment, I'm actually pumping this thing back up. And I believe when it's all said and done, we'll be ready to go again. So in the beginning, I had some air in here because of our connection here, but that should wind up inside our reservoir. So in a minute, might open that up and take a look in there. But it's basically, I can feel it here. It's ready to go. So if you'd like to, obviously you can take the two screws out on the cover, look inside, look at your fluid level, but do pay attention how the diaphragm is located in there. It can be put in backwards. So you need to put it back as you find it when it's first installed. We showed you earlier to install this cover. The other idea would be, or maybe a better idea would be, is especially if you need to open the line or put a new line on or whatever, to put this cover on at the very last. Reason for that is when you do this shortening and so on and so forth, then you can go back down here and look at the ramp working, just like it did before you ever opened the line up, like you got it from the HYMEC from the factory. So that's a good idea. And then you see all this working properly. Check your free play one more time. If you got it all closed up, don't touch it while you got the lines open. You'll lose fluid out and then you will have to bleed. So the free play, I'm looking at it here one more time. It's a quick check. I got about, maybe 3/16 inch. I'm going to call that good for now. I'll do a little test drive. Make sure that you get it in gear. Make sure you don't have clutch drag and so on and so forth. A couple other ideas, obviously, or options we would have. We have a 2,500 millimeter long line here that will be long enough for about any handlebar position or any way you want to route that tubing. By the way, as you know, on that tubing, we can make curves relatively short and it will not affect the performance. So here we have a long line. It comes ready. We show you, we got an insert in here. We got an olive in here. So we have everything here that's required to install it onto the bike. And there may come a time where you need to bleed the system. And for whatever reasons, if you've lost it or the fluid because you opened it up and so on. It's a quite simple process, and I'm just going to go through the motion of it. So we have available a bleed kit from Takaraki. It comes with already with 4 ounces of fluid. The fluid color is got sort of a pinkish color. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not use DOT 3 or 4 or 5.1 brake fluid. This will swell the seals. So all I do is, when I go through, I'm just going to go through the motion here. I have a syringe which comes in the kit. We've got a little tubing on here. I fill the fluid into the syringe. I come down here, as I see here, my little bleeder valve, and then up on top, on the master cylinder, we have 2 screws in there. We need to remove the cover take out the diaphragm. Then I crack this bleeder open about a half to a 3/4 turn. And as you see, it's a pretty small bleeder. I would, in this case then, once I have that open, I put my bleeder on here. And then I normally would want to hold that at the 12 o'clock position here and try to have the line, it's going down a little here, but that should not bother us. Otherwise, it keeps going up. I push the fluid in, fill it up to the master cylinder. When the master cylinder is full of fluid, from me pushing in, you will see air bubbles and fluid coming out at the top. Once I have it full, I actually suck backwards. In that process, I will suck air and fluid back out of the line, back out of the slave cylinder, and back in here, and always hold the syringe vertical. I push fluid back in, fill up the master cylinder, suck it back out, push in. I do this about 2 or 3 times, and then I snug my bleeder back up, and be careful here, only snug that up and quit. That's a very small 4mm screw here, so it does not need very much torquing. It's only 2 Newton meters, so it's very light. Just snug it up and it will seal perfectly. Take my bleeder off, put the cap on, and then put my cover back on at the master cylinder. Now, most likely, that in that point, once you push that fluid all back in and fill the master, it will be way too full. So you will either, you can take the syringe and suck a little fluid off, or if you put the diaphragm in and the cover on, you squish excess fluid out. Then you have to wipe it up. So that is basically, in a very short, brief presentation, how you bleed the system.
Well, the install is complete, and as you can see, Pete and Aaron installed it without any trouble. It's a fairly easy kit to install. We've taken it out and we've tested it. Runs and clutches great. But if you do run into trouble, you can give Magura's tech line a call at 1-800-448-3876, or call Takaraki or Biker's Choice, and they can help you as well.